I'm just going to leave it on. Thank you. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it on. I'll never say anything I shouldn't be saying. I'm not worried about the hot mic. Let's bring this special regional council meeting to order, please. We acknowledge that the Northern Rockies Administration Center is located in the heart of the traditional territory of the Dene, Cree, and Dunezaw peoples of the Fort Nelson and Prophet River First Nation. We further recognize the rights provided by our treaty. We also celebrate the contributions and enduring presence of the Métis in our region. Can I have adoption of the agenda, please? Moved by Councillor Roper, second by Councillor Andrews. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Today, this meeting is about a municipal overview presentation by our staff. So I will turn it over to Mr. Barry.
Thank you, Mayor. For some of you, this is a bit of a refresher. For others, it's new. The intent today is part of the orientation process. This is a high-level overview of the document that Council already has as part of the package called the Municipal Overview. We'll touch on a number of different topics as we walk through this today. There'll be items that we'll touch on as we go through the overview that will get under the hood of them at a later date, i.e. when we talk asset management or talk about the IDCA agreement, we'll get into those details as part of the orientation process with Council moving forward. The department heads, which besides Jay and Aaron sitting at the table here, the rest are sitting behind us, will be doing the presentations of their own for their own departments today. As we go through it, don't hesitate to ask questions. The intent is to have some dialogue. Feel free to chime in whenever. We don't think we'll actually get through this today by 6 o'clock when we do the stop, or just a little early. We plan to stop and probably about 10 to, I believe, the Mayor. So if we don't, we'll just adjourn for today and we'll carry on the next the December 12th meeting. So without further ado, if there's anything from Council, any questions, I'll just continue. I'll kick it off. So local governments were essentially creatures of the province and are empowered by provincial legislation such as the Local Government Act and Community Charter, which sets out the regulatory and administrative structures, powers, and abilities of the municipality or municipalities, regional districts, et cetera, to provide services that reflect the community's needs and desires. The intent today is to outline who we are and what we do and how we do it. So the NRM was officially incorporated on February 6, 2009. It's the first and the only region municipality in BC, and officially combines the former entities of the town of Fort Nelson and Northern Rockies Regional District. The boundaries of the NRM mimic that of the previous regional district, encompassing about 10% of the province's landmass, or approximately 85,000 square kilometers. Just to put that into perspective, that's about 2.7 times the size of Vancouver Island, or about the same size as the island of Ireland. That said, our population density is a lot less in either one of those areas. Okay, thank you. Our borders, as you can see here, border the Yukon border, Northwest Territories border, the Alberta border, the Stikine Mountains, and just south of Prophet. We have just a couple notes, 2 regional parks, campgrounds, Tetson and Bailey. We have 11 landfills, for example. And you'll notice on your document, you'll see here actually on the screen where it says Fort Nelson. Aaron's just going to point to a little tiny red dot. That is the boundaries of Fernie. And the reason why we have that there, for those who were around previous councils ago, there was a question that got asked at the time around comparisons. We get compared a lot to other organizations and local governments based on our population size and whatnot. A lot of times it's comparing apples to bananas in regards to what we provide in terms of service levels. And what had occurred, just in terms of a bit of history, is we actually were question specific one time on Fernie. The community of Fernie compared our budgets to theirs, the question got asked because the populations are relatively the same. And what we ended up doing as a bit of a, to put it in perspective for council at the time and for the public at the time, is we overlaid Fernie into our map to show in terms of physical dimensions. It's about 16 square kilometers compared to our 85,000. And we also compared the various service levels. And that's why we like to go through this process up front with council and the new council is to get an idea. So you get an idea in terms of the services that we provide, ask any questions specific to that. Because we are quite unique in terms of the vast amount of services that we do provide as a municipality and a region. So. The town of Fort Nelson versus the NRD or NRU versus the NRM. Well, the town of Fort Nelson is no longer a legal entity anymore. It's the community of Fort Nelson. The Northern Rockies Region Municipality is now the official entity. We're responsible for all the rural and public roads. The only roads that we aren't responsible for is anything that would be classified as an arterial, a numbered highway, or a resource road. The province used to, but no longer, prior to us becoming a region municipality, no longer collect provincial rural property taxes. Tax collections in the rural areas have been transferred to us as a region municipality. Another unique thing for us is rural subdivision approval is the responsibility of the region municipality, where in other areas of the province, regional districts, etc., the province looks after rural subdivisions. So Toad's a perfect example. When we developed a subdivision up there, we've had a couple other areas in the rural areas off of Old Alaska Highway, for example, that we've developed as part of our rural subdivision plan. The powers and responsibilities of municipality, including planning, land use, and bylaw application, now extend to the border of the region municipality. So basically, to all those borders I've commented on the previous slide. Significant assets. We have $500 million worth of assets. Trevor reminded me the other day that on the books we don't have $500 million of assets based on our balance sheet, but that's because of what the value, because things depreciate over time. But in terms of the replacement value of our assets, it's approximately $500 million worth of assets that we have based on our facilities, roads, water, sewer equipment. I think if you remember the conversations about this town hall, we talked about replacement value of town hall versus what it currently is worth. And if you were to replace it, and when you look at asset management, you look at what the value of that would be to replace it, because that's what your renewal cost is, right? We have a tier 2 regional airport with regularly scheduled flights. Not as many as we'd like today, but we're hoping to see that increase. 11 landfills, 9 of which are closed or in closure provision. And then the Toad one that actually has, from a landfill perspective, isn't open, but we can dispose of sewage at the Toad landfill. And of course, we have our operating landfill here down 55th. We have approximately 60 kilometers of urban roads, 150 kilometers of rural roads. We have a couple of gravel pits, quarries. Already talked with the rural subdivision approval, our urban and rural official community plan. And of course, from an economic development perspective, we have regional economic development, not just localized to the formal town site, community development, tourism, and of course, we're responsible for emergency management and emergency operations. In terms of those assets I talked about, we have fairly robust asset management program or renewal program. Actually, in 2016, we were actually recognized by the Canadian Network of Asset Managers, CNAM, for our asset management program, and we were awarded the GRIO Award in Halifax, which recognizes excellence in developing and implementing asset management approaches and significant improvements in business performance through the use of asset management tools and techniques. So that was a pretty prestigious award for the organization. It's a national award, and it was a testament to a lot of the work that was done in the past to develop the asset management program. How do we do this? Well, the goal obviously is maintaining the self-sufficient, these assets in a self-sufficient way in our remote northern region. How do we provide services? Do we provide? So we got our recreation facilities to support an outdoor focused community and tourism. We have 2 ice surfaces. We have the indoor skating pond, the curling rink, the aquatic center, the hall, many parks and green spaces, campgrounds, the new remote Alaska Highway comfort stations, or part of the Gotta Go program, which was a partnership between us and the PRD and Public Works Canada, the province, Destination BC, or Northern BC Tourism, I guess.
And even though it's not within the municipality, we manage the contract for the one at Trutch as well, right?
We managed one for Trutch and Sickiny. Yeah. Yep. So the part of the agreement is we provided in kind work, and that's part of our contribution for that. And given our location, and instead of splitting up the contracts, it was better from an efficiency perspective. And then in terms of proximity to the community, it provides income for a local here.
They're not our asset though. We don't own them. Who owns those comfort stations?
I guess technically it would be Public Works Canada because of the location in terms of an asset, but they could technically, I guess, end up in no man's land if no one wants to continue to maintain them. Because the agreement has an expiry date per se, but the intent is to continue on with that program.
But doesn't really belong to anybody except for maybe technically the feds, right?
It was a group. On federal property. Yeah. Or was I left it off at the comfort stations? We have a golf course, 4.7 kilometers of paved trails, community facilities, services, events to support the active northern lifestyle. Of course, we provide lots of significant community events. The 2 big ones are Canada Day and, of course, Spookorama. The community has a theater, fitness events, and a full service fire rescue department that must be self-sufficient and provides protection or services throughout the entire municipality. Here we have just the org structure from regional council down to the directors. In local government, elected officials guide the organization's operations by providing policy direction and guidance to staff who operationalize the direction of council. And typically council policy and direction is through the resolution of council. And of course, through that bylaws and whatnot. I've said to councils in the past, without council direction or policy direction, staff's just guessing. And our role is to get that direction in from council and to provide that service to the community. That's good. For the next one. In terms of me, who am I and what do I do? Well, I provide advice and support to regional council with the strategic and business planning, financial, administrative, and management, fiscal services and assets, provide organizational leadership, and promote external relations and communications. So in terms of my role, I act as a conduit between regional council and staff, overseeing the overall management of the operations of the municipality and ensuring that the policies, programs, and other directions of council are implemented. I'm supported by a team of directors who lead the operational and administrative areas of the municipality, including human resources, finance, corporate services, regional development and planning, public works and airport, recreation, parks and facilities, and fire rescue bylaw, which either at most likely before the end of tonight, we'll have an opportunity to meet the leads of those departments and they'll chat about their various departments. Generally, as the administrative head of municipality, I advise council policies, finance, and legislative requirements, and I implement regional council's policies, programs, and other directions. council or local governments in BC basically follow the one employee of council model. It's not legislated. It's a best practice. Not aware of any local governments in BC that don't follow the one employee model. However, it was interesting. We went through the Lidstone conference here a few weeks back. Don almost made it sound like it was legislated and required, but it's clearly not. It's a best practice that the municipalities follow. All employers report directly or indirectly to the CAO. And as I'd mentioned before, I'm the link between the policymakers council and the policy implementers, which are staff. So I've said before is tell us which way you want the ship to go, and you steer it, we paddle. And what makes a successful CAO? I'm still trying to figure that out. But relatively speaking, we need to be a staff, but especially as a CAO, we need to be unbiased and nonpartisan. Provide sound fiscal management and advice. Be an effective organizational leader, and it's extremely important to have a strong relationship with council. Here's the organizational chart. I don't tend to go through it position by position. Just generally speaking, as an organization, we're always looking at continuous improvement opportunities and ways to improve our efficiencies. Our workload tends to go up, never go down. We're typically being downloaded increasing responsibilities from the province, or additional legislation increases our workload. So we're always looking at opportunities to increase our efficiencies by utilizing automation, for example, things to get the same job done with less capacity requirements or inputs. And the departments, when they go through their presentations this evening, will outline some of those various things that it's occurred over the past few years that's helped with that to free up capacity. Recruitment and retention in this organization is extremely important. I've been doing this for this type of capacity for a number of years, and trying to recruit and retain people to the community or to remote northern community is always a challenge. You want someone that wants to be here and enjoys being here, and most times, well, that success has typically occurred because people that we try to pick are people that are already here. So we really focus on training internally, succession planning, looking for people that have certain abilities, either within the organization or in the community, that might not necessarily have the skill set, but the skill set can definitely be acquired because they have the abilities to do that. And it really makes a difference when you look at the retention. If you go back a number of years ago, this organization had significant issues retaining and recruiting people. And we've been fortunate that we've had a relatively stable workforce here. That said, there's a number of retirements on the queue. Just I had one retire here, Leo, just recently, and of course we've got some more coming up potentially over the next few years. So we need to recognize that. One of our focuses is to ensure we've got a level of succession where appropriate and where we can make that happen, so that when someone does plan to leave the organization, the hope is we're provided information, provided that notice in a timely manner, and so we can prepare for it and do what we can do on our end from a succession perspective where appropriate to mitigate the impacts in the organization. And additionally, and you'll see when we go through and you see the responsibilities of the various departments, it's very common in local government, especially with organizations this size, is we wear many hats as employees of the municipality, deal with all kinds of different issues and whatnot. There's many of us all have different names and Erin's a perfect example of it. I mean, she's the deputy CEO, she's the director of human resources, she's the EOC director, and she's the emergency management program coordinator. So lots of hats depend on the day of the week, the situation. And it's fairly common in local government. Local governments anyway of this size are small. Any questions, comments? Okay. Yep.
I have just one. Just from the very beginning there, just one of the things that I run into often as I consider it an opportunity. That is that when we are referred to I never did sign up for the job of being a town councillor. Thank you very much. I don't live in town and I'm not part of a town council, but I really relish being a member of a regional council. And because I have a regional mind and regional thinking. Anyway, you'll hear that language. It's normal. It's normal in the interaction that we have with everyone, but it's always an opportunity for people to educate what the NRM is, because it actually helps us. It helps us to have more interaction with our region at large once we understand it.
Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Erin. As I mentioned, Erin wears many hats, and she'll walk through what she does in her department of one. She has more hats than people. But welcome to local government, and what a box of hats, Dave. And when I'm away, Erin steps in and looks after things, and she's my go-to person, and I'll hand it over to you.
Right. I'll try not to get too long-winded or delve into too much detail. So in the new year, we are planning on doing a bit more of a detailed personnel HR review and update, just to provide council with some information about our different personnel groups. So I'm going to try to, this is going to be fairly high level, and we like I said, in the new year, we will do a bit more of an in-depth review of some of our personnel. So the cover page of every department as we go through it just has some really high bullet points as to some of the areas of service levels that fall under that department. So under me are human resources and industrial and employee relations. So those two words often some people get switched, but I'll just differentiate. Human resources is truly just management of the human resources, and industrial and employee relations specifically refers to unionized relations. So that is the management of our collective agreements. So safety management, I also take care of in concert with other departments. Risk management, I take care of. I'm the emergency program coordinator, so I do emergency management, and I am the deputy CAO. So under human resources and industrial relations, things like recruitment and retention, compensation, benefit management. Over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of employee counseling and coaching through COVID. That was some tough years for us. I also take care of personnel legal issues. So not only compliance with the BC Labor Code, but we also have to stay compliant with the Labor Code of Canada for our airport group. So they are a federal endeavor. Also, common law and employment standards would impact our excluded staff. I also manage training and development, policy development in relation to HR and IR issues, collective agreement and employment contract management, grievances and disputes. Under safety and emergency management, lots of safety policy and procedure development. Again, we consider safety to be an organizational priority, so I'm not the sole person responsible, but I just ensure that the policies and the procedures that we develop are in compliance with WorkSafe regulations and other applicable regulations. I am the main WorkSafe BC liaison. I take care of ensuring that we have evacuation and facility safety plans. I don't do them personally, I just ensure that we have them. I do the coordination and management of our municipal emergency management program, and I am the emergency program coordinator and typically act as the EOC director in an activation. As the deputy CAO, I'm appointed as the CAO in his absence. I assist him in whatever direction and coordination of the operations that's required. I provide support to this council in achieving the goals and objectives of your strategic plan. And I assist Trevor in the preparation of the organizational, operating, and capital budgets, and making sure that that information then gets to corporate services so that it can get to you guys. At the end of each department section, what we did is we have this a little bit of a notes page just to provide you with some information or a little update or a snippet of something that we thought was important to let you know about. So it's going to be different for each department, but from my perspective, I think it's this last year in 2022, we've negotiated 2 collective agreements. So our QP agreement is good up until 2024. IAFF is a bit of a beast. We are always behind in our IAFF negotiations, and that's just the nature of the IAFF. So I'll explain that more when we get into our personnel discussions, but our IAFF contract expires in 2023. This year, we undertook a large revision of our management compensation structure and all the processes. So that had been in place since 2006. For the new council, just some notes. So our primary EOC a few years ago moved from the fire hall to this building. Part of that was due to during an EOC activation, most often the fire department is involved from an operational response standpoint, and that fire hall can be very busy and very noisy. So we needed to establish a different EOC. So that's now here in this building, and that's contained in the Raven Room. Sometime in the new year, we'll also do a bit of an activation setup to show you what that would look like once it's activated. One of the things that we did a number of years ago was we installed a natural gas generator in this building to power our email servers and some of our critical equipment. So that's key to helping keep an EOC going in the event of a power outage. In 2019, we implemented a regional emergency alert system. One of the things that if we ever have to activate our EOC, you will notice that in the event of an activation, it requires a lot of staff. So a lot of our non-essential daily operations do get impacted during an EOC activation. So for instance, if it's an activation that requires a lot of communications, I'm going to steal a Jaylene to handle all of those communications. So some of those non-critical legislative things may not occur at the same time that they might if the EOC had not been activated. So our recreation center becomes our reception center. So if we have any kind of evacuation, or if we need a warming center or a cooling center or a clean air center, that is our recreation center. So some of those events might get displaced. So it's just the nature of what happens during an emergency, and it can have quite a significant impact. So any questions?
Health and Safety Committee?
Health and Safety Committee, we have several. So any workplace, so it basically a department or building that has more than 21 employees has its own health and safety committee. So we have established health and safety committees at, I think every department has their own. So Public Works, Recreation, Airport, Fire Hall, Town Hall. Yep. Pardon? Each facility, yeah.
And then is there a common one that pulls together?
Overarching general stuff.
Right.
We have a common one. It hasn't met in a while. COVID kind of threw a little bit of a wrench into that process, but we're looking to get that back up and running again.
Right. Because if one does something, particularly if there's regulation, all of a sudden you have corporate knowledge. That corporate knowledge needs to be shared, right? Yeah. So there should be some kind of okay. Next is emergency social services, and wondering about how that's. Maybe you've answered the question with the fact that you use staff to run a reception center, and so you don't run ESS as on a volunteer.
On the community level, we lost our ESS Red Cross coordinator a number of years ago. She retired from that service, so we've been unable to sort of maintain any kind of volunteer bank of people. So we run our ESS in-house through our recreation staff.
Okay. I think that was all I had. Yeah, thanks.
All right, I think we're moving on to Jamie.
So corporate services, this is our power team. Myself, corporate manager, also known as the clerk to council in olden times, but also in a lot of legislation. And the director of corporate services. We have the deputy corporate manager, and the communications coordinator and the technological services manager. So in many ways, this sums up what we do as a team. We have the three corporate services, corporate administrative assistants, corporate services assistants, basically the ladies that run the front counter. And then we have the records management clerk, who will report up to the deputy corporate manager, and the tech services analyst reporting up to the tech services manager. I forgot, I have my own in front of me, but I don't control that one. Thanks, Erin. So high level overview, we provide administrative support to the organization. A lot of times it's process questions, it's relevant to policies and bylaws in practice. And so we provide a lot of guidance and support, basically just reading and reflecting back the policies and bylaws and implementing them in the everyday work that we do. We're the legislative process keepers. So it's one of those necessary evils. If you have seen the municipal overview, it's almost a page of legislation and it numbs the mind at times, but that's those are our marching orders for the most part. We serve as the public liaison and communications conduit for the organization. So inputs from the public to council and vice versa from the messages that council would like to relay publicly. In doing so, that's also our front counter services. So they're the kind of frontline ambassadors for the organization. So they get the walk-in traffic, they receive bill payments, utility payments, licenses and permits. And then they also act as the email and telephone reception for the organization. So they're kind of your travel agent when you are inquiring with the municipality and need information. We have a handful of statutory roles that go along with some of the legislative pieces as well. Technological services is another large part of the organization. I do not pretend to know what most of that is. Thank goodness there's people that are very bright that do that work. But again, a necessary evil. So yeah, they look after the everyday needs of folks when something doesn't work, or they're also evaluating new software, new hardware, organizational change when it comes to tools that are available, and they manage our cyber threats and security, as well as email, basic interface between records and and the electronic world, things like that. So, and GIS and mapping, can't leave that out. So obviously spatial data is a big part of what many of our departments do, and they look after that as well. Corporate services are records and information managers. So you could see in the org chart there, we have a records management clerk, but it's there's also a legislative responsibility with that regard. So access to information from the public is something that we are responsible for. And at times it's routinely available information. So we just create those pathways that people can access information themselves, or it's also information that's potentially protected. So we circulate the requests internally and prepare the responses for release. We serve as the bylaw notice complaint screening officers. So essentially, if a person's unhappy with having received a bylaw notice, there is a appeal process, and we manage that. So, and then this always seems to be the tag along with the community healthcare initiatives. No, it's like, I can't shake it. So yeah, so community healthcare initiatives fall within corporate services as well. And so we have some folks that take great pride in preparing the housing for locums and new physicians to the community, welcoming them to the community, and then also working with council to develop some of council's initiatives in that regard. So we can probably move to the next. So I think I probably explained most of this. I guess I missed the piece around the administrative support. So what else? That also includes coordinating legal advice and inquiries, as well as contracts and agreement. And a lot of that hinges on the procurement side. So obviously working with the departments where those requests are originating, but helping to coordinate it so that we're not doubling up the efforts across the organization. Key, obviously, is always compliance with the Community Charter and the Local Government Act. And those are the two pieces of legislation that basically tell us how we can conduct business as local government. And then the communication link. So that spans also website updates and monitoring, Facebook moderation. We draft a fair amount of correspondence, receive all the correspondence, and we will be bringing something more in depth to council to think about in terms of communication holistically for the organization. I talked about tech services, the very, surface level of what I know. And there's a bit more there about records and the CHP being the Community Health Plan Steering Committee. So some of the things to note, I guess, are highlights from the last year. So we got through an election. So we also look after elections, by-elections, and referenda. So this year we were happy to put in place a few kind of modern processes for the election. We successfully did an electronic voter registration process, which it made the whole process a lot more efficient, and we were able to validate the responses the same day versus trying to manually distinguish forms that were filled out. We're working on an evolution to electronic document records management. So if you've ever seen the vaults, it's floor to ceiling paper, and discovery is not the easiest thing by any stretch. We have an excellent records management clerk, but she's only so good. And so not only scanning and digitizing, but also trying to provide a framework around how we organize our electronic records. We've transitioned to Box for cloud storage from physical servers. So that was driven by a few goals, one of which was cost savings, because maintaining physical hardware over time is expensive and susceptible to fail, and it's hard to protect when you're a small organization at times. So, and it also hugely supported the working from home model, which we experienced over COVID.
So we don't use tapes anymore?
No more tapes. Oh my Lord. Backing up a tape and then saving it in a desk drawer is not a good way to back things up. So, obviously some growing pains with Box, but by and large, it's been a big improvement. We this year implemented an online procurement platform. So we typically accepted bids in paper format or by email, which there's some risk in doing that if you were ever to be legally challenged. So the online procurement platform has standardized the way that projects are created, as well as creating a new level of transparency for bidders. Admin reports. I mean, most of you realize that we do a lot, but we review about 100%. We do review 100% annually, 100 plus reports annually. And that equates to over 100 sets of minutes and agendas as well. There were over 100 letters drafted or sent this year. We did 10 bylaws, many of which I think were our procedure bylaw. We're not done. I firmly believe that bylaws are intended to be living documents. If you haven't amended a bylaw in 20 years, it's time. we did over 180 latest news items and media releases through our online platforms and over 200 social media posts. So we have lofty goals for communications, but you continue to move that bar higher as well. So yeah, so that's kind of it, I think, in terms of our accomplishments for this year. A lot of what we do is behind the scenes, but important nonetheless.
Tours for the finance department are still trending, so you might want to get in soon.
Oh, hello there, Mayor, Council. All right, I'm just gonna jump right in. We're not that exciting, actually, in finance. We've got a relatively small team. Myself, I've got a deputy treasurer, deputy director of finance, and a team of 4 clerks. We've got a payables, a corporate services clerk that sort of fills in where needed, got a taxes and utilities clerk, and a payroll. So some of the key areas within finance are the financial planning and budgets, treasury and cash management, of course, the regular accounting and payroll, payables and receivables, financial reporting, and internal controls. And it's referenced in the larger document that everybody has, just outlining the various legislation that we refer to and that applies to our work, along with the regulations and bylaws. We have a few reoccurring requirements, sort of year over year. The big ones are the annual budget preparation. So that's something that you'll be getting involved in the early new year. The rest of staff is already well into it and spending a lot of time in budget prep. We have quarterly water and sewer billing. We do tax sales. We try not to do tax sales, but we do tax sales once a year, just in late summer. A couple of the other big areas for us are our year end. So that results in the audited financial statements. We've already had our interim audit, which went very smoothly. So we'll do the rest of that in March and get the audited financial statements prepared for you. A couple of the other little areas that go along with the budget preparation and financial auditing are our mandatory reporting to the province, such as the SOFI. So I might have gone off script a little bit there.
Was there one?
Okay. I'll leave it at that. No. A couple of other things we'll just make note of. Let's see. Pretty much touched on all of that. Tax is the most important thing. How we get our money. Sure, tax season comes again from the budgeting process. We have to have our tax rates and tax rate bylaw completed at the same time as our 5-year financial plan, which is in May. And of course, that brings in the lion's share of the regional municipalities revenue, just over 20 million in 2022. So yeah, a very important piece to it all. Move on, just a few stats for you. I won't read them. They're some interesting ones, but if you have any questions about any of those that you see, I'm happy to expand on them a bit.
I just have one, one thing to note. There's a really helpful note in this list here regarding taxation and the property tax rules. I find it useful as a counselor when I'm trying to educate on the regional municipality and the nature of our system and the taxation. Can you imagine a community this small having 9,200 tax rolls? Those are land tax rolls. Okay, so that's how the indicator is of how far reaching it is in our whole region. It gives a better picture, and it's a simple way of presenting a picture to our community about what we are.
One note, actually, I'll add about our property tax rolls. So that number results in property tax statements that go out to each property owners. One piece of work that was done before my time, but I think is very worthwhile mentioning, is that Tammy, our Deputy Director of Finance, helped put in place a switch from paper to PDF and emailed statements. So we've seen some significant savings and efficiencies with that work. So a couple of things to note. Again, predecessors, Tammy and Tony, implemented Virtual City Hall for us. That's a client or customer facing addition to our website where payments and account work can be done online. We're still sort of finishing up the implementation of GP Cloud. A couple of outstanding issues that have yet to be resolved, but there's workarounds in place, but that means Tammy and her team have to work harder. So hopefully we get those resolved in the near future. And one thing I'm looking forward to in 2023 is a review of the procurement policy. I think it's been about 5 years and it's slated for review, so that'll be on the agenda.
I don't know if this is the proper place for it, but somebody questioned me a while ago about if they sign up to receive their tax bill electronically, and then for whatever reason they don't get it, whatever, then they don't pay it, because right now you get that little thing in the mail, so that it's a reminder to pay. What actions do we as the NRM take when we fail to get somebody to pay? Like, is there more notices that go out, registered mail? Like, what's the process?
So I'm not sure if I'm clear on sort of the scenario that you're laying out. Is it just that somebody says they haven't received notice?
That they don't pay their tax bill.
Okay, if they haven't paid their
Yeah.
tax bill,
Yep.
generally, unless you're a new homeowner, you generally know what you're up against, right? And when taxes are due, you do get your notice, whether it's in the mail or PDF email. And if you haven't paid by the due date, we're legislated to apply penalties, and so that will happen. The notices that will come, I think, are once or twice more during the year, possibly around September, but I can definitely confirm that for you.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, like, if you sign up for the electronic notification and then for whatever reason maybe you're a senior and you failed to pay it, like, I don't know, whatever, then do you get the reminder notice electronically, or are there steps to make sure that the person or the landowner has actually received the notice? Was
Yeah.
the question that was, yeah.
Let me bring back the detailed process for you,
Okay,
because I can
thanks.
see a couple of different avenues, and I'll get it laid out. And
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Trevor. Well, that was, because I didn't do the intro when Trevor started. That was Trevor Archuk. He started with us actually earlier this year. And a new addition to the community. Spent some time up north. So when he came from when we were interviewing him, he was from Qualicum Beach. We wondered, why do you want to come to Fort Nelson? We spent some time here.
I don't know. The weather next week, he's gonna be wondering, why did I move?
But he did spend some time north up here, so. Next we have Lisa Thompson. Lisa's our Director of Regional Development Planning. Speak about all the wonderful things our apartments do.
With my finance notes. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Congratulations. It's your first, I guess, official meeting that I've been to. So the first official for me. So as Scott indicated, I'm the Director of Regional Development and Planning, and I've been in this position for just over a year. I have been in Port Nelson for almost 20 years. Previous to this, I worked with the Ministry of Forests and Lands here in Port Nelson for 17 years. So on the screen, we've got the organizational chart for the regional development and planning teams. Just refer to them as RDP. There's myself as the director, and we've got 7 positions that report directly to myself. We've got 2 regional development officers. So one focuses more on big business, industrial type regional economic development. And our second regional development officer focuses on tourism and small business. We've also got a sustainable community development coordinator who focuses on community and social aspects of the department. And we have a land and natural resources coordinator who focuses more on that bigger crown land piece, amongst other things. We have a regional planner and a chief building inspector and bylaw enforcement officer, as well as a community development and planning assistant. We're also looking to add a potential intern in 2023. So we would have 9 in the department in total. But you guys don't know about the intern yet because we haven't brought it to you, but we will be on December 12th.
Spoiler alert.
I know. I've got so many exciting things to share, but I don't want to like ruin it all. But I'll give you a little hints of some exciting things that we have coming up. So I'm very fortunate to be able to work in the department. The people I work with are extremely motivated. They're professional individuals. They function really well considering the diversity and the amount of work that we take on. I like to think of it as, our regional municipality is 8.5 million hectares, and the work that we do is as diverse and as broad as the region that we work in. So there aren't too many aspects of land management, economic development, social community aspects that our department isn't involved with. All right. So if you break down the work that we do in the department, it's generally these 5 areas. So we have planning and development and land use. We have building inspection services. We have regional economic development and tourism, sustainability and climate adaptation, and community and social development. So one of the things I'd like to do as the director of the department is we do focus on these things, and we are, a planning type department, but, I'm really trying to promote the idea of we're not just planning, and the things that we do, we need to apply a filter of what is the community going to gain from what we are doing. So a study that goes on the shelf is simply that. It's a study that sits on the shelf and nobody sees what we've done. So I really want to promote that, tangible results and what are we going to get from these plans and studies that we do undertake, and make sure that we see some momentum moving forward to ensure that the community receives and sees benefit from what we do. So when we talk about planning and development and land use, we review and development recommendations for various applications. So council gets to enjoy those when we bring them to you, and you get to consider things like development permits, development variance permit, zoning applications, things like that, or zoning amendments. We deal with public inquiries regarding permitting and application processes. We deal with the management of building and demolition permit processes. And we deal with land disposition. So for example, we've got the Toad River subdivision that we occasionally sell lots in once in a while. There's one that's sold since I've been here. So, and it's actually quite exciting. We get these inquiries and people are like, I want to move to Toad River, and you give them all the information and they're quite excited, these people. I don't know. I mean, we sold one and there were 11 in total and we've got 3 left. So yeah. And I actually just fielded an inquiry today from Jim Little, for those of you who know. So he was asking about zoning in Toad River. So I provided him information and then I put the plug in, and here's also 3 lots that we have left in case he was interested. So exactly, right? And Public Works was kind enough to make a new sign for us for the sale of the lots. So that's an example of how we work collaboratively with our friends at Public Works. So future land planning activities. So without too many spoiler alerts, one of the things we are contemplating undertaking is an OCP update for 2023. So you will hear about more of that in January once the regional planner comes back. But we've done some pretty extensive work going back through and following the process from start to finish of how that OCP was developed in 2011. It was actually quite an impressive process. I wasn't part of it, obviously, but I do remember the kitchen table workshops and things like that. So by following, and using that as an example of how it was developed, it can inform us of how we need to move forward to update that. So you'll hear more about that in January. We have a budget asking for that as well. Spoiler alert. So one of the other things we do in our department is we do building inspection services. We don't have a lot of new builds, although little spoiler alert, there might be a big build coming, but you'll find out more about that when we see the development permit for that. But we do issue some building permits and some really interesting permits around tank permits and moving permits and demo permits. Demo permits, I think, is going to be a bit of an issue moving forward. We've got, we just had a housing needs assessment completed last year. 26% of our housing stock in Port Nelson is modular, and they all are starting to age. So that's something that we really need to start thinking about. If, as those, get demolished, where does that material go to? So there's implications of those things. We administer 471 business licenses. So we do that within our department. And one of the exciting things we've got in the works right now is we're developing an agreement for the provision of building inspection services with Fort Nelson First Nation, which will allow our building inspector to actually go and perform building inspections for some of the projects that Fort Nelson First Nation will be undertaking in the future. Regional development. So we do promote economic diversification. Just that whole cyclical economy of Fort Nelson and the region around boom and bust with forestry, oil and gas. There's really a need to make sure that we're focusing on ways to diversify our economy and to make it more sustainable and resilient. So exploring opportunities around agriculture, and different industries instead of the traditional natural resource based industries, although those are important, but also looking for ways to, like I said, to make things, to make the economy more resilient. We do support for expansion of the agriculture in the region. So this is one that, for no apparent reason, I do have an interest in. It just, I don't grow bananas or anything interesting like that. But there is so much potential around agriculture. And one of the things that, not to spoil it, but on December 12th, we have AgroConnect coming as a delegation. And you'll hear more about that. We're planning a bit of a meeting with the organizers of AgroConnect on the 12th. So you'll see an invitation to come out and listen to a presentation. And then there'll be the delegation at the council meeting on the 12th. We do ongoing local business attraction and retention. We address transportation needs to support economy. So we look at things like rail and some of those larger issues around transportation that affect economic development in our region. And then, of course, we take on special projects supporting regional councils' strategic direction. So on average, we tend to have between 20 to 25 special projects a year that we put forward through the budget process. And then around regional development, again, this is the last spoiler alert, but we have a pretty exciting project that we talked about today that we'll be bringing to council as well on the 12th around opportunities to enhance market the region, which I think is pretty exciting. So more to come on that. Tourism, we do a lot around tourism. We are part of the Northeast BC Tourism Marketing Consortium. We do in-person marketing with attendance at annual trade shows and events. We do printed tourism marketing. And of course, we have a great relationship with our visitor center contract, which is the Chamber of Commerce. We coordinate Regional Council's Tourism Action Committee. So, and we also have a tourism strategy that was developed and endorsed by Council in 2021, which contains actions and recommendations, projects that can be undertaken. So our budget for this upcoming year will include a summary of some of those projects that we're intending on undertaking in accordance with the strategy. For sustainability and climate adaptation, we do promote sustainability initiatives. So things like our vermicompost project that, again, our friends at Public Works administers and operates. So we do the planning, public education aspect of that project, as well as local educational programs related to sustainability. Our community and social development coordinator coordinates the Regional Council's Environmental Advisory Committee. And one of the exciting upcoming, I think it's exciting, I heard it referred to earlier, is, download from the province. And this program is really a download from the province, but you'll hear more about it tonight, the Local Government Climate Action Program. So although it is a download from the province, it's also an opportunity to give money to local governments to implement projects that really can be tailored to what the community needs. So it's not just something like blanket legislation that one size fits all. It's here's some money, now do what makes sense for your community. So that's one of the things that we do as far as sustainability and climate adaptation, which you'll hear about tonight. From the community and social development aspect, there's a plenitude of things that we cover in that regard, from animal welfare to connectivity, to community and public safety, to reconciliation with First Nations and Indigenous communities. One of the great things that we've done, initiated from our department, is the work around the development of a land acknowledgement statement, which has evolved into a land acknowledgement framework, which is really setting that foundation of creating and maintaining and enhancing relations with Indigenous peoples. So that's been an exciting aspect that we've covered off, or at least initiated from the department. One of the upcomings we have for 2023 is implementing some requirements around accessibility. And when we talk about, how we can see real tangible results for people in our communities, accessibility is one of those. So there's some requirements that have come through the Accessibility of BC Act that we are going to have to do things like have a plan in place, form committees, and provide mechanisms for feedback. So those are some exciting things that we'll be implementing in 2023 as well. We provide support internally and externally regarding grant applications. And we provide support for local social, cultural, and recreation service clubs. So for example, we are working closely with the Fort Nelson Snowmobile Club to find alternative routes for their snowmobile trails, which, by the way, aren't just used by the Snowmobile Club. They're also used by other recreational users such as ATVers and cross-country skiers as well. Hikers, yeah, bears, wildlife. They like those trails too. All right, so just some notes on our department. Maybe I should stop there. I've been talking. Does anyone have any questions before I continue on? Sorry. I'm so excited about this. Yeah, that's right.
I have a question on the addressing transportation needs. So the question of the taxi service keeps coming up. Are we addressing that, or is that, how do we address that?
Mm-hmm. So there's definitely challenges around, you know, being able to just go out and enjoy yourself, for example. It's not just, you know, transportation, it's also economic development. It actually takes away from our businesses when you can't go out and enjoy a meal and maybe have a couple of drinks because you don't have a ride home. So it's definitely something that our department has looked at as far as not just local transit, but also rural transit. So connecting communities to communities. We've had conversations with NDIT around opportunities of what that might look like. We've looked into things like coastal rideshare and what that might look like in this area. So the licensing surrounding that, it's almost like an Uber type. So we have been looking into what options exist. We've also looked in from a business licensing perspective, requirements around taxi services and what they require as far as provincial requirements. So yeah, we recognize there's a need to assist wherever we can in that regard.
Thank you for that. Also then with reconciliation, Heritage Week is coming up in February. And I talked to Rob about recommending that the municipality meet with the nations to sign the declaration for the week. And I mean, February comes pretty quick. So getting it on the docket of presenting at a meeting of that possibility. Yeah.
So I have a question about grant writing. So you talk about the internal grant writing. Do we have an external grant writer that helps the nonprofits? And do we work with NDIT and you know that whole process that they have for external grant writing?
We do. One of our positions is partially funded with the NDIT grant writing grant. So we do offer that service. The person who's in that position right now does a really great job at making sure that she communicates externally about grant opportunities. For example, last winter, I know there was an opportunity around transit and support for our seniors bus. So, you know, she was instrumental in ensuring that application was completed thoroughly and on time, very short notice, and they were actually successful in their grant application. So we do provide external. We don't refer to her as a grant writer though, but definitely is there to provide that service if needed.
Right. Okay. And yeah, that's good. Thanks.
So just some notes about our department in general. So there has been quite a bit of turnover in the last 2 years in the department. So as I mentioned, I've been in the position for just over a year. I think at the beginning of 2021, there were 5 out of the 8 positions that were actually filled. And then there was some key turnover of some key staff. So the director position, the regional planner, the land and natural resources coordinator, the community and social development coordinator, and then the corporate development and planning assistant. They were all new people that came in 2021. So there was quite a bit of turnover in the department, but we've managed to complete a lot of work. And like I said, I'm excited of what we're going to hopefully be able to accomplish in 2023, provided we have council support to do so. Just some of the things that we are looking at undertaking in 2023, or that we completed in 2022. Our downtown revitalization plan, that's targeted for completion the beginning, actually, well, it's supposed to be the end of 2022, but the presentation to council will be in 2023. The Toad River subdivision land disposition, so I spoke about that previously. Preparing for proposed updates to the business license and regulation bylaw, the building bylaw, and the animal control and pound and licensing bylaw. I spoke about the official community plan update, as well as the potential development that's proposed for the corner of 50th Avenue North and Airport Drive, just beside Subway. So we've been working closely with the developer on that to ensure that zoning and that the aspects around vehicle circulation, traffic circulation in that area is addressed. In 2022, we saw the installation of the Northern Rockies' first level 2 EV charging station. And we are tomorrow installing the last 3 helical piles for the installation of our 911 call boxes. So we'll see those installed here shortly as well, which is pretty exciting. And we developed and adopted the NRM's corporate sustainability policy. We undertook some work in 2021, 2022 related to wildfire risk reduction along our community trail. We led the organization's development of the land acknowledgement framework and continued work supporting reconciliation. We did some significant advocacy work regarding connectivity and hosted Minister Lisa Bear to the regional municipality in July, August. We participated in the Fortis BC intervention with the BC Utilities Commission, which was quite the complicated and complex undertaking, which you'll hear about tonight as well. There's an administration report that's been put together regarding that. We've continued to work with WildSafe BC and the Conservation Officer Services to reduce human-wildlife conflict, and we saw the endorsement of a human-bear conflict management plan that was endorsed by council this year. We continued engagement with prospective new business startups and support the needs of recreation service clubs and organizations related to land use. We support the participation of the Fort Nelson First Nation Northern Rockies Community Force. So we're involved in that to an extent, basically now through just governance, looking at governance and kind of clarifying that role around shareholder versus board. Development and implementation of the NRM tourism strategic plan. We continue to print in our digital marketing materials related to local and regional tourism, and participation in trade shows and events promoting the region, as well as last but not least, the acquisition of the Toad River Bridge. And with that, I think that was it for my last one. So just in closing, the regional development and planning team is excited to work with this council for the next over the next 4 years. And really do want to reemphasize that importance of building strong communities, not just Fort Nelson, but all communities within our region, and making sure that our businesses are strong and our economy is sustainably resilient. Thank you. Oh.
You'll hear more. No, it's not a key report. Questions for Lisa? I'm sorry.
It's not really a question, but maybe it's for Scott, is the development and implementation of the NRM Tourism Strategic Plan. Do we have access to that? I'd love to read it.
Absolutely, we can provide that for you.
Thank
Sure.
you.
the Nonna Creek public process that we committed to, is that your department as well?
That's
Okay.
me,
That's you,
Yeah.
particularly you?
particularly me.
Okay.
That's been mine, although the bridge, I suggested we call it Berry Bridge, not the. I don't want to necessarily. So yes, Darius Lowe from the Ministry of
Yeah.
Forests, him and I will be talking in the new year about what that public engagement piece is going to look
Yeah.
like. I've started to put together some questions to put out as a survey. We talked about putting out a public survey around just getting that feedback from the public of what they traditionally use that road for. And ensuring that, you know, there's a fulsome representation of opinions as far as, you know, the worthiness of that road and what it's doing.
Good.
Yeah.
One other thing specific to that, Mayor, is we've been pushing the province to do their part also. What we didn't want to happen, honestly, is for it to be handed to us and us. I mean, the province has a responsibility to engage appropriately with the region and the stakeholders. And there seemed to be a little bit of a perception that we were going to take that on. Not that we're not going to push and be part of it and involved. At the same time, we felt it was appropriate that the province does, you know, and part of our communications that they do what they're supposed to do based on, well, what the province is supposed to do, versus NRM. Here you go. You can look after the whole thing. So we're pushing that piece, and we're going to be directly involved. We want to ensure, as Lisa said, that the process is appropriate and that there's proper engagement. But we're really leaning hard too on the province to make sure they do their part as part of this.
It was pretty clear to me when I met with them at Toad, well, when they had the meeting at Toad, I happened to be there, that it was looking like they wanted it to be a joint process. So yeah, so hold their feet to that for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure.
The other question I had was about Northwest Tel and connectivity. Recently I read something that they're in a public process where they're trying to get feedback from 3 communities. Fort St. John is one, Heslin, I think, is another. And I just can't recall the third in the Yukon, or no, maybe it was the Northwest Territories. Did they do a similar process here where they asked for our concerns or you know, the impact of connectivity or lack thereof in this community? Did they do that? They're calling this phase 2. So I wonder, was phase 1 us?
So I think it's been a variety of different opportunities over the last year or so to provide feedback. This one in particular, although it was those 3 communities, and I can't remember either what the third one was. There's an opportunity to provide feedback as well, and we've advertised that in our social media and websites. Yeah. So whether there's been one specific to Fort Nelson, I don't recall if there was one specific to us.
I'm not surprised,
The
but
unfortunate thing, I'm not either, because the unfortunate thing is when you look at that nationwide map and they identify areas that are under service, we're not one of them despite the service.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's all I had.
I just want to address something that Councillor Dickey asked about the strategic plan. So that the strategic plan that's currently in place is from council's strategic plan. And so I would assume that we would be going through that process again, and this council will come up with either reinforcing the strategic plan or recreating one, right? There'll be some process.
Absolutely. We're in the process. We're possibly looking at using Christina Benty to help facilitate that. She's a previous mayor of Golden and does that and works with many councils. She was going to be part of some of the training orientation piece in January, but then there was a conflict, of course, that we picked, which we thought was perfect. It was the same week as the conference in Prince George. So we had to divert from that and take a bit of a detour. But the intent is she's given us a bit of a work plan in terms of some ideas in terms of how to engage with council. For her to engage with council, I think one of the initial ones, we'd probably do it virtually at first, not to go through the whole strategic planning process, but just to start talking priorities and process and what kind of process would council want to follow, like in terms of how in depth and whatnot, so she can build that instead of having to go through the logistics of getting in here for an evening session with council to kind of go through that. We're going to secure a date with her to do that virtually. And then when we actually go through the actual process, when she develops that, I think there'll be some dialogue back and forth to figure out how does council want it to look. And when we secure that, then we get her up to go through the process with you as councillors to determine what your priorities are, and which could very well be many, could be from a previous one. But this council has endorsed that, right?
So what's the timeline? I know 4 years sounds like a long time, but we know it hopefully goes in the blink of an eye. But
So we're tackling right in the new year. It's we're hoping to have I'm hoping to have her provide some discussions with council virtually in January. That's what the intent is. So that's, and then from there, look at availability of council and and her availability also to get everything done. So it's into the new year. I'm hoping to have it done by the first quarter. That would be the intent. Timeline in terms of the previous time we did it, I think we were well into May, I think, right? So we're and again, a lot has to do with just, I mean, the availability of council to try to get everyone together for that.
Yeah, from my perspective, I'd sure like to see the timeline sooner rather than later, and definitely before we finish the budget process. Because your strategic plan and your budget could align.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Thanks.
Thanks, Lisa. So next we have Public Works and the airport, and that's Luann Watson, Director.
Hello. I don't know why I had a problem.
yeah, are you all excited?
Let's talk sewer mains. So this is the first time I've had an opportunity to speak to you all. So welcome and congratulations. I'm Luann Watson, Director of Public Works. Under my umbrella, we have the Public Works and the airport. And under Public Works, there's water, sewer, solid waste, roads and grounds, cemetery. So there's a lot of little sub-departments that go on within that umbrella. And the airport itself has its own water, sewer, roads, buildings and facilities and whatnot. Within the department on the Public Works side, there's, not including myself, we have a Public Works admin manager, a Public Works ops manager, which handles the crew, 4 equipment operators, 3 water sewer operators, 1 utility maintenance, and 2 laborers and a mechanic, for a total of 14 on the Public Works side. The airport has a manager and an admin. Sorry, I forgot the admin on the Public Works side. An admin at the manager at the airport as well, and 4 equipment operators. The Public Works has a ton of assets. I don't know if you had a chance to review the overview document itself, but it listed several numbers such as 52 kilometers of paved roads and 150 gravel roads. And so I'm not going to rhyme off those numbers to you here today. But if you have any questions specific to it, please don't hesitate to ask. We have several asset management plans in place that talk about what we have, what condition it's in, what values it's in. And that helps us every year establish an annual reinvestment amount, which for each asset, I'll pick on roads because it's the easiest to visualize. Every year we identify $1.5 million for asphalts. And if we have projects that year that are valued at, say, 500,000, it'd never be that low. But if we're not using $1 million, that would go into reserves to help fund those larger projects that happen as the years go on. And that happens for roads and water and sewer, the airport, mobile fleet, mobile equipment's coming to you in January, along with a more fulsome presentation about our asset management programs, just so you understand. It's a presentation all to itself. So. Right? Please jump in anytime because your enthusiasm is hard to match. So in Public Works, our operations changed significantly from winter to summer. We have a kind of a third mini season in there, which is spring thaw, where we're doing lots of culvert thawing and chasing that spring freshets and flooding purposes. But generally speaking, we have winter ops and summer ops. All year, we have a 24-hour person on call, and that's for roads. That's true of water as well as the airport. So there's 3 people on call within this department. For roads, the summer schedule is Monday to Friday, 7:30 to 4:30. And in the winter, we switch from Monday to Friday to Monday through Saturday. So, and Saturday just provides for an equipment operator and a laborer. So we're not full staffed on Saturdays or Mondays. It provides a little bit of additional coverage. And that person on call, for example, I'll use this weekend because we got a heavy amount of snow Saturday night. So our equipment operator on call woke up Sunday morning and called everybody in the department, and all 4 operators showed up to make sure that those roads could be cleared. In the winter, we operate on a priority level. So our priority 1 roads, for example, would be the 4 avenues that run north, the Simpson Trail, Liard Airport, and then 42nd. 52nd Avenue is a collector, your 2 service roads. Those are your core priority 1 roads. Anything that serves hospitals, grocery stores, or schools, anything of that type of nature. While our equipment operators are doing that, we have a laborer on the sidewalks for priority 1, and they hit the go button as soon as it starts to snow, and they hit the priority ones. They don't hit the next priorities until they're done their priority ones. Yep.
What happens if it continues to snow and you got 6 more inches on your priority 1s by the time you're done? You go back to priority 1s. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. There's also times where we do a little extra to catch up. So there might be some overtime or some contractors called in. So those are rare occasions, but they do happen where we have to expend some resources just to catch up on that snow. The other piece of the priority, so we have our priority roads and our priority sidewalks. We also do parking lots and community trail, and we assist seniors occasionally. We actually have a seniors policy. So if they sign up, we will do their driveway, but it's low priority. So we're not on demand or a contractor for them, but if we're able to get them before they can get a contractor in there, it's just beneficial. So we do have that.
How many can I met this year? You know?
27 was the last count I had. So that could be up or down. I'm hoping it's up. So, and in the summer, primarily our summer work includes, your digs, your landscaping, crosswalk painting, whatnot. We typically have a summer student to help us out with those summer events because we have such a short season. We have an ongoing education and training required for all personnel. So the mandatory training on the safety side, ground disturbance and traffic control and whatnot. And specific to our water sewer personnel, they're certified pursuant to the Environmental Operators Certification Program. So, and those have, every 2 years, they have to make sure they meet their continuing education units in order to stay certified. These are just some numbers. Quite a lot of road and rural road. There's not much more to talk about there. They're just numbers, I'm sure. Same with the water, but I'll talk a little bit more about the water. So again, the water and sewer operators have 24/7 on-call and we've done some significant upgrades in the past few years, and I'll just touch upon a few of them. One of the main ones in the braggables is the conversion of our settling tanks at the water treatment plant. We have 4 settling tanks, and we've converted 2 of those to a dissolved air flotation tank, which just reacts better with the particles because it floats it to the top rather than settling it to the bottom. So that helped to increase our productivity as may be required. This year, we've updated the lights in the plant to be more efficient and brighter. It's pretty dim in there. We don't have chlorine gas in the plant. We produce hypochlorite on site. So that's a huge safety concern alleviated. We've expanded the airport, the airport as well, but the golf course reservoir and the rural west pump houses in order to provide better fire flows. On the sewer side, again, just a bunch of stats and numbers there. We've recently, essentially the wastewater treatment plant's been upgraded, renewed in the past, I want to say starting in 2013 or 14, we did the UV. And since then, we did the grit removal system at the headworks. We did the aeration at the lagoons that we received a grant through the Strategic Priorities Fund. So 100% grant funded for a new aeration system, which included desludging and a new relocated.
Conversations about the socks and the desludging.
I'd forgotten those. So essentially we have a beautiful brand new water treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant. And so we're going to continue to protect that. As part of all those upgrades that we did, we worked very closely with the Ministry of Environment to let them know what our plans were with respect to the effluent in our treatment and with respect to that plant. And we're currently undergoing an application to the municipal wastewater regulation. So we've submitted the application and we have some work to do in order to fulfill some further information. So you'll see that coming to you at budget time, just for carryover.
Spoiler alert.
No, no. Do you want to report specific to the application? So that's it on the sewer side. Yes, yeah. So solid waste, this one's got some stats to it as well. I really like the closed landfill stat actually, because that's actually a fun part. Everybody fights over that one because they get to go up the highway and go inspect those landfills, and it's a good pleasant day if you get a good weather. Yeah, it's a good day, right? So annually we get to do that, and we inspect our 89 bins that are up and down the highway as well, as located in town. I think there's 9 in town, I want to say. So we inspect those as well. We have an active landfill that is operated under contract by Wide Sky Disposals. The waste station this year was converted to its own segregated from the landfill contractor. And that is operated by LJ Contracting, which is Nancy's Dean. So that's new. She also is operating the share shed, which is brand new to the operations there, which was done collaboratively with planning. And then, of course, the vermicomposting sites were on our second full year operating as a full operational pad. And that's on a separate contract as well. That's about it. Any questions on that?
I have some questions. One is the cemetery and capacity. Like how many
No.
acres is it and there's no capacity?
I don't know how many acres it is offhand, but we literally just identified 14 plots in addition to 6 remaining.
Yeah, I think we have 19 still available for reservation. But then we're working on an expanded plan for the cemetery, which will lay out basically the northern
Yeah.
portion. The problem isn't space, it's what's been laid out.
It's
so
the
far.
plot, yeah.
Yeah.
So we recently just established the 14 plots to get us by, and then we're working with corporate services to establish what that cemetery needs are. The land's there.
And then just I used to work for Recycle BC.
Mhm.
So all about education and awareness. So for water usage, do we run campaigns on how to conserve?
Annually, we have a drinking water week,
Mhm.
and as well as we actually have a water conservation policy in place, which was adopted by council. So drinking water week, we do tours, and we actually have a gentleman on staff, Harold Young, who's incredible in trying to push water conservation. And we currently have a brochure that's going to be in the tax bills that talks about the cost of water and that type of stuff.
And the other one was on the solid waste collection bins up and down the highway, and as part of tourism and packing in and packing out. And you know how they have the bathrooms that are funded by the province. If you're a gas station or whatever, they have the little sign that says you can use that bathroom because that is getting subsidized for the bathroom use. Of running a campaign of if you're traveling up and down the highway, pack your stuff in, pack it out, or drop it off at one of those facilities. So working with the province on a campaign like that. Because I think having staff drive up and down the highway for 89 bins every week, how can we reduce that, right?
So the 89 bins are actually partly mini transfer stations for communities such as Muncho. Toad River in particular has what I would call a transfer station, which is just bins and stuff. So a lot of it's that. Public Works Canada actually provides a lot more of those tourist type waste disposals. But we can certainly, that's not a bad idea. And we can work with the rec center, with parks and planning to take a look at what might be appropriate versus the community level waste disposal.
If I could, sorry, just to clarify, as staff, we don't drive up and down weekly for those bins.
Sorry, that's another contract under by Archie's.
So the bins are typically either weekly or bi-weekly. They're dumped by a contractor. So the truck goes up and down the highway and dumps them annually as part of our landfill inspection, which we're required to do annually. At that time too, we inspect the bins just to make sure that from a condition perspective, hinges and whatnot, that they're in still working condition, and the hinges, the doors, the poles and stuff.
Any further questions on this one? So we talked a little bit about continual evolution and upgrading of the asset management programs. So there will be a presentation coming to you in January. The where we'll talk a little bit more about that. And as well as mobile equipment asset management. So we are currently working on enhancements around the water treatment programs to address organics and manganese. So you might have heard stories or been exposed to murky type looking water, dirty looking water. So it's a combination of organics and manganese, and the chemical process and studies that we're currently working on are falling in around those seasonal changes. So we're doing some studies to try and learn a bit more about what these seasonal impacts are to our water treatment system, our storage system, and the dirt and the timing of the water coming in from the rivers. So it's an ongoing effort to try and reduce that. In the meantime, we have an opportunity pending for the installation of raised intakes in our storage reservoirs, which is designed to get cleaner water. That's more so than sediment water. We talked already about the sewer treatment and vermicomposting and the sheriff shed, which is doing very well. I wanted to talk just a little bit about contracts because we do a lot of contracts and a lot of procurements because we own a lot of infrastructure. So we're constantly redoing it. So one of the things we do is we try to look creatively at the opportunities in front of us and how we can try to support those local contractors that are able to provide those services. For example, asphalt can't be provided locally, but road base can. Some of the adjacent works can. So we try to go outside. It usually results in multiple contracts as opposed to one prime contract, but it's an attempt to keep things a little bit local within our purchasing policy. This year, there was some impacts to several of our capital projects, one being the Sickney Bridge, the other being inflation. So inflation targeted a lot. And in particular, we found anything that touched fuel and anything with steel or even plastics was significantly out of control. So that impacted things like the mobile sweeper being far over what we budgeted last year. And the Sickney Bridge, we struggled, our asphalt contractor struggled getting oil for their asphalt. And fly ash for cement, we just couldn't get it in time to beat the winter. So you'll see a lot of projects are carried over to next year. Cement, for example, the bulk of that was awarded to a local contractor. The foundation replacement for the Public Works Fire Hall, we do have a grant in place for that work. And the construction is to end at the end of 2024. So we're going to start the foundation replacement awarded to Ben Wall, BKT Wall. And he'll start that in spring. That was one of the projects impacted by the fly ash. Regional Airport. So again, beautiful picture. Not of our brand new runway. Can we, perfect. So again, just a ton of slides, a ton of stats. We recently updated runway 0422, and that was done last year. We had an ACAP application, which is 100% grant funding for a total of, it was over $17 million in total. That project came in and around 13 million. Spoiler alert to the end of my notes here, but on that particular project, there was 26 local hires. Yeah, it was very, very well done. Approximately 20% of that value is still. Runway 0826, that runway is our secondary runway. So 0422 is our certified runway or primary runway. 0826 is our secondary across from runway. This one's going to be a topic of conversation. Spoiler alert, I'll steal this term. So there'll be some things coming to you about that because it's in poor condition. And so we need to make some strategic decisions about that. So we'll be bringing stuff to you in the near future. So just to talk a little bit about 0422 and the fact that we're a certified airport. So being a certified airport, it means that we can have scheduled flights to your CMAs. And ACAP will provide 100% funding for our airport for air-type projects if we're certified and have that sched flight. So you can't just say give up sched flights, for example, without giving consideration to the capital that can be provided through the Air Capital Assistance Program. Any questions about that? So the airport operations. So again, it's got a sewer line, a lift station, and some lagoons. It's got 18 kilometers of storm drainage. That's not true. Ditches, maybe. The town got 18, but the airport does not. Storm pond, recently discovered storm pond in behind taxiway B. Sanitary lift station, which was just rebuilt. We'll be looking to source out a generator for that one in order to prevent environmental spills. The water pump chlorination station was just converted from a water treatment plant, as we used to source our water from a well, which is falling into the river. So we received a grant, I want to say in 2018, to install an 8-kilometer water main from the municipal supply to the airport. So that treatment plant turned into a pump or a chlorination station, and then 1.9 kilometers of water distribution main. Some notes on the airport. So we have a fresh airport manager whose first day was last week. So he's in the honeymoon phase. This year we successfully conducted a live emergency exercise in the safety management system audit, which is a legal requirement from Transport Canada in order to be certified. So they were both successfully conducted in September and went very well. There's an asset renewal focus in the coming years towards buildings and facilities out at the airport, because those buildings were built in the 50s. We received a RADI grant, a Regional Air Transportation Initiative, which contributed to some of our operational needs this year. For example, our chemical fell under this grant, so it was paid for this year, so we're all topped up. And it also paid to upgrade some of our equipment this year for friction analysis and whatnot on the roads. So you'll see something in the script when we go to budgets. There's an outline for the summary, and we'll talk specifically as to how we use those funds. So air movement statistics are they look like they're coming towards pre-COVID numbers. So pre-COVID, we were roughly at 6,800 air movements. And at the end of October, we are at 60. So Medevacs have been increasing, averaging 111 annually since 2016. So those are big numbers.
Air movement, is that people or aircraft?
People. No, sorry, landings and departures.
Is there a funding stream that could or help with maintaining the airport, whether it's runways or whatever, because our medevacs are increasing? It's so very important that we have that airport. So is there the possibility of funding from alternative sources because of that?
Absolutely. So ACAP, we just renewed 0422, so that's in prime shape. For 0826,
But that's federal, right? Sorry to
That's federal,
interrupt.
yeah.
So the medevacs would be a provincial
correct.
concern. So is there?
There's a BCAP, it's called. So it's British Columbia Air Access Program. It's a great fund. It's not going to cover something like 026 or even 3 or those assets that aren't covered federally.
Have we ever applied there? Like,
I'm sorry?
have we ever applied through there?
So you may recall that Sky North grant for that we just finished it up. It was for that fuel project with
Oh, right. Okay.
with
Yep.
CAM.
Yep.
So that was the latest one. So, and we're looking at, there's 2 options for that we might take advantage of. One is that generator for the lift station, and the other one is so the maximum you can get under that grant is 2 million. So it's going to be helpful, but it's not the end all be all.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I just add, so one of the rationales under Sky North's BCAP application was access to fuel after hours, which is important for medevacs. So that he ensured that was emphasized in the application and was probably contributed to its success. Yeah.
And that's it for that one. Any questions? Did I put you all asleep? You're welcome. I don't know. Lisa did better. Oh, thanks.
Mayor, at 10 to 6, so from a presentation perspective, we can probably, you want to chat about, introduce the committee of the whole piece? No, the rec is next. There's two left. There's rec and then fire. So we'll. So Stacy gets to dwell on it for the next couple.
Get up to.
I did want to take a few minutes though to talk about something that I've asked staff to consider, and that's to bring a report forward to us about a review of the procedures bylaw, which would include the implementation and the benefits of implementing committee of the whole meeting process, where we can look at a more relaxed, I guess, the municipal act, actually they don't call it municipal, local government act, I guess now, shows you how long I've been around. The local government act, the committee of the whole is allowed for in there, and it allows a bit of a relaxed procedure and procedural process. I see it potentially, and we'll have the discussion. When did we say you might be able to have some?
So we have December 15th is a special at noon, but given what we have possibly available for the December 12th meeting, because we tended to do 4 to 6 at December 12th meeting, there's a likelihood that we could probably get into that discussion because there's just two departments left with this presentation.
Yeah. So the procedures bylaw is pretty restrictive, right? And the idea behind it, of course, is to structure your regular meetings and or your special meetings. And in my experience, it limits the amount of potential discussion that you can have if you really want to dig into a topic. Right now, I think you're using special council meetings in place of what's intended to be committee of the whole meetings. But even your special council meetings, because they're decision-making meetings, your procedures bylaw still applies and still to some degree restricts the amount of fulsome discussion that you might be able to have. And so again, it's just, I've asked staff to consider the pros and cons and to come forward with a discussion about how that might work, when it might happen, and whether or not that's something we might want to incorporate moving forward. And so I see a, my gut tells me there'll be a reduction of special council meetings in lieu of having this committee of the whole process, which will be live streamed, which will be open to the public unless there's, unless we're talking about, we want to talk very specifically about anything that can go in camera. You can still go in camera as part of a committee of the whole meeting. The act allows us to do that.
So then is staff going to bring back a report? Is that what I heard, the pros and the cons? Because I'm really not understanding it. Like, I understand the fact that we wouldn't be making decisions, but then I'm not really understanding why that would create the environment for a more fulsome discussion if it continues to be streamed and taped and all of that. I don't really get that.
Yeah, well, the fulsome discussion shouldn't be impacted by the fact that it's streamed.
Well,
It's impacted by the fact each of you are only allowed one time you're only allowed to speak one time and ask a question one time. And you're very restricted by the procedures bylaw at a regular meeting with respect to how maybe practice has been to just let the meetings
we
go.
haven't been following.
Yeah, so,
Okay, we have not.
yeah.
Yeah,
We speak
we
till
basically
it
ran as a
stops.
committee.
Which can make for some very long meetings. And so, as I said, I've just asked that, that staff come forward. I think it'll be explained. We can look at the Municipal Act, the Local Government Act, and make a determination as to whether it's something we'd like to try and implement. I believe there'll be a more fulsome discussion, but.
I think I've brought that up once before, and I know there's councils out there that will have a pre-meeting committee of the whole and bring up the topics of discussion, and then it allows them to go home and think about things and sleep on it, as opposed to say doing the meeting all at once, bringing information to the table, and then having to do that vote at the very end of that discussion. It allows you a little bit more time to process things and really gather your thoughts. So I would love to see a report on that for sure.
Good. Any other quick questions before? Okay.
So at the special meeting that we had last week with the golf course, I would have much preferred to have the presentation by the presenters, have them leave, have us discuss internally, and then make the decision rather than making the decision when the presenters are sitting there.
Mhm.
Because I think there's questions that need to be asked, and maybe it's something that's asked from our support, Scott and his support team, that can't be asked in front of I don't think it should be asked in front of a presenter.
Yeah.
So I think there's a process of, if a presenter is coming with a recommendation or an ask, they present and then they leave and then the decision's made.
That I understand where you're coming from, but the act is pretty restrictive with respect to what can be done in camera and what can't be. So whether they're sitting there, whether they go outside and they watch us on TV, they get to hear it. Our council meetings are open to the public, and so it doesn't matter really what it is that you're talking about, including the fact that they've made a presentation. Sure, there's probably some things that we could have discussed, and we should have discussed, whether they were here or they weren't here.
And I think that's the thing, right? It's like having time to digest that information. And also that process, there was no information coming from staff. So all we got was this paper with numbers on it that we had no backup information from staff, like where they checked, was this, some of them weren't accurate, like not intentionally inaccurate, but they weren't accurate. And so I found that process to be a bit frustrating too. Yeah.
Yeah, there's we had options. One was to do nothing. One was to ask staff to take the information away and come back with a report to us. The third option was to not give them any money. The fourth option was to give them some amount of money. And that's what council put on the table and resolved to do. We could have deferred if somebody had to put that on the table. I mean, there was a motion made by council. It was duly seconded. There was opportunity for debate. And that's probably the time we should have deferred. Let's defer this decision until, but council chose to move forward with the decision. But Leslie, Councillor Dickey, I just don't see in an open meeting like that, the opportunity for us to go in camera to ask those questions. It's whether they're sitting there or whether they decide to go over and sit over there, they can still be here. Most delegations will give you that opportunity and leave, but they don't have to. Is there anything else? Seeing none, adjournment is in order. Does the procedure bylaw require us to have a mover and a seconder for the adjournment?
So, yep, go ahead.
That was a question to staff. It depends on the procedure bylaw, but
It doesn't require it, and the chair can always adjourn if they feel the business has been concluded, or you can ask for a motion.
okay. I'll adjourn this meeting.
Okay, I need to know for the meeting that's coming up, do I only get to talk once on it? I need to adjust